The Epstein saga is also shining perhaps a brighter spotlight in this moment on the Me Too movement. Gretchen Carlson and Julie Rodzinski, who co-founded Lift Our Voices, write for Time magazine this week about what the scandal involving Epstein actually tells us about the state of the Me Too movement, noting, quote, the shift in public discourse around the Epstein case shows the subtle but profound way our culture has changed. Today, the pressure is rightly placed on those in power, those who enabled abuse or participated in it, and not on the survivors. That is real progress. Gretchen Carlson and Julie Rodzinski join me now. And for our viewers who may not know, Gretchen, you sued Roger Ailes. Julie, you sued Fox News, both of you for sexual harassment. You were incredibly important voices in this moment. And I so appreciated your piece. Gretchen, I'm wondering, when you speak out now, why is it so important to highlight the fact that there are some wins here when it comes to how victims are viewed?
Yeah, because I think what we tried to point out in our op-ed is that sometimes the media says that the Me Too movement is dead when we have one little blip that happens. And meantime, Julie and I are working every day to make sure that we're changing laws and increasing education about these issues in the workplace and making them safer. And so we look at everything a little bit more optimistically. The idea that society right now in this Epstein case is not demanding that these 1,000 survivors come forward, right? They're not saying we don't believe them, we need to hear from them and they need to tell us their names. No, instead we've come past that point in time. And now they're demanding accountability for the alleged perpetrators. And they want to know who was involved in this and they want them to be accountable. That is a tremendous shift in the way in which we used to look at these things, even just 9 years ago when I came forward.
Julie, as my colleague Paula Reed just noted too, though, there is some concern that the predators could end up being protected in a situation like this. Would you agree that that is a very real concern in this moment?
It's always a concern. It's been a concern for many decades, certainly before the Me Too movement. It continues to be a concern today, but the reality of where we are today is that, as Gretchen pointed out, we are not automatically going to a place where predators are protected. That was the case for many, many, many years before the Me Too movement really had its most recent iteration, where, of course, the predators were continued to be promoted and continued to be enabled. And it's the survivors who had their careers or their lives, or in the cases of these young women who are now adult women, had their lives not just destroyed, but threatened continuously. Today, we're at a place, as we pointed out, where the spotlight is rightfully on predators, holding them accountable and making sure that they pay a price for what they did, not on the young women who were trafficked and who were abused by the predators who are both named and the ones who we have yet to name.
There has also been this push, and I certainly heard it, having spent the last week in Washington, D.C., and this was such a topic of conversation. What I was also hearing from a number of people was it shouldn't just be about talking to Ghislaine Maxwell this week, right, as we had Todd Blanche speaking with her in Florida, but they should also be speaking, Gretchen, to the victims. I think that can be interpreted two different ways, as a concern for the victims, but also some concern about should they be forced to speak again. That would really be up to them, correct, Gretchen?
100%. And we like to call them survivors, by the way, because they have survived a horrific ordeal, and it puts a little bit more of a positive light on how far we've come, that we're not going to just only call them victims, but survivors. And I think the point here is that it's up to them if they want to come forward. They're not being forced to come forward because people aren't believing their stories. If they want to speak, then that is their personal choice. Julie and I always tell this to the people who reach out to us, because in our society, even though we've had so much progress, you may still be penalized for speaking. Not to mention the entire Trump administration potentially retaliating against you, not to mention the MAGA movement potentially retaliating against you. You know, when Julie and I came forward, the number one thing our lawyers said to us was, they're going to malign you, they're going to kill you. And to a certain extent, that could be true in this situation again.
And yet you did still come forward, right? At great personal risk, but it was important. And so many women, and frankly some men as well, are grateful for you having the courage to do so in that moment. Julie, there is, the president was asked yesterday before he left for Scotland whether he would consider a pardon. And he initially said no, but they said, oh, I have the power to do that. What would that say in this moment to see a pardon for someone like Ghislaine Maxwell?
It would be incredibly distressing, and it would be disrespectful is not even the word towards these survivors. It would be a slap in the face to the young girls who, as I keep saying, were young girls when they were trafficked, to say that a woman who threatened them, a woman who reportedly took away the passport of at least one girl, preventing her from getting off of Epstein's island because that girl used to have sex with Jeffrey Epstein, girls who were threatened to be fed to alligators if they didn't go along, girls whose lives were threatened, whose careers were threatened, adult siblings of those girls whose careers were threatened. I mean, this is all Ghislaine Maxwell's legacy, and that's not just accusations. She was found guilty of all of this and of trafficking these girls. To what end would somebody pardon Ghislaine Maxwell? I mean, take away the politics of this. To what end would the President of the United States, who does, of course, have the constitutional power to pardon anybody, want to pardon somebody who did this to young girls? And if he does go ahead and do that, and the fact that he's even contemplating doing that, should raise questions about why. Why would somebody do that? To what end? And I think that's a question that the president needs to answer, and that his base demand that he answer, because she is not a victim, Ghislaine Maxwell, despite the fact that there are elements of his own base now who are starting to paint her that way. She was found guilty by a jury of her peers of the most heinous crimes against young children. And for a movement that has been talking for a decade about holding predators accountable, my God, is she not the top predator still alive who should be held accountable for everything that she did?
Gretchen, Julie, I always appreciate you taking the time and all the work that you have done. Thank you again for being available today.
Thank you.